Hi everyone, welcome to CCJA Sundays. My name is Camila Vititis and I'm with the Colorado Conservatory for the Jazz Arts. I'm thrilled to be speaking with pianist and composer Julian Shore. Hi Julian, how's it going?
Hey, very well, thanks. How you guys doing?
Good, thank you so much for
Good.
being here.
My pleasure. Yeah,
How's
it's
everything
great.
going where you're at?
Things are cool. I'm at my parents' place in Rhode Island right now. I had a couple of gigs with the tenor player Noah Preminger in Boston, so decided to visit my family for a little while. So it's pretty
Nice.
nice.
And you're fully back? Are gigs starting to come back?
Yeah, slowly. Um, it's kind of weird because in New York, a lot of places closed down. So you're seeing a lot of smaller venues have some pretty big name acts because there's just very limited places to play right now. So it's kind of cool to see a bunch of great players in an intimate setting. It's rare. So it's kind of a neat time anyway for that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I always like to start these interviews by talking about how you first got into music. Maybe you could talk about like why you got into piano specifically and what were some early recordings that were inspiring, just kind of the whole background.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's good. It's Father's Day, and my dad is a pianist and organ player and keyboardist and stuff. So I grew up listening to him play. He was in a band, like kind of a local legend kind of rock band in Rhode Island called the Young Adults. And they used to open up for like every act you can think of that would come through Rhode Island. So, and actually like used to have David Byrne before the Talking Heads and stuff like that when he was in Rhode Island and stuff. So he's kind of had like this now he's in antique sales, but like for a while he was in this like crazy rock band. It's kind of funny. But yeah, just he would always play Bach at home. That was kind of his thing. So he would either play like Beatles tunes and stuff or these like wild rock songs in his band or Bach. So that was kind of my primary thing. And yeah, and then he got me some piano lessons with just a great local teacher who he was kind of more of a jazz player than a classical player. I didn't really realize that at the time, but he got me into, he gave me a CD of Tommy Flanagan, which was my first jazz CD, which couldn't have been a more perfect like introduction. I definitely have some students that get into jazz with some pretty rough entry records, so I feel very lucky that was like the first one that I really wore out. And then some Bill Evans discs and kind of Usual Suspects like that. And, yeah, that's sort of what got me going. And then, yeah, from there it was more, I went to like jazz camps, like local jazz camps and stuff. I went to the Litchfield Jazz Camp in Connecticut, which is an amazing program. And I now teach there, which is pretty weird. But, I went starting when I was 12. And really that's I grew up in a small town, so I never had anybody to play with for the most part. So going to a jazz camp and all of a sudden getting to play with people, that was the big change for me, to go from this is kind of like a fun thing to, wow, this is a team sport. This is like the interaction and just, yeah, there's like a community feeling at a place like that was really infectious for me. And that's, I think, when I really started wanting to do this, seeing other people my age who were also into it and sharing records and all that stuff, so.
Totally. I
Yeah.
can relate because CCJA, like the organization I work for now, was the organization I grew up doing camps with. And it's like
Awesome.
come full circle. It's so cool. And I think, right, being around like-minded people is like a huge thing, especially when you're getting into like this.
Yeah.
Do you have classical training too? Like, is that part of your background? And do you still do that?
I started with classical for sure, as most pianists did, and some like rhythm and blues and stuff, local kind of blues bands and stuff like that. But I did start with classical, and I didn't get far enough into it as I wish I did when I was, you think you know everything when once you hit 13 or something. It's like, I'm going to be a jazz player. I don't need to play classical anymore, which was so stupid. I wish I had gotten into it more, but now, once I went to college and after college, I've been playing a lot more. But I've always loved listening to it. And like I said, my dad played a lot of classical at home and classical records and stuff. So it was always around. But yeah, I'm not like, I definitely wasn't doing like classical competitions as a kid or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite like classical pieces or composers that you love to listen to or maybe draw inspiration from compositionally?
Yeah, sure. I really love Fauré. He's one of my real favorite composers, and especially like his latest stuff towards the end of his life. Yeah, it's just really rich from a lot of places, harmonically, rhythmically, and he kind of has this counterpoint, this almost like old school counterpoint sense, but with all this really swirling harmonic stuff that I really like. I feel like it kind of dipped with his students, with Ravel and stuff. They took his modal thing and really went with it. And I love those guys so much, for sure too. But I feel like the kind of hybrid thing that Fauré was doing, I feel like it didn't come back into, or at least in the way that I hear it anyway, until like Ives or a little bit later, which I think is really interesting. So I've always been really fascinated with Fauré in that way. But yeah, I mean, I love Ives too. I love obviously Bach and the big guys, Beethoven. I love Bartok a lot, and the kind of beginning of the ethnomusicology and fusion of folk musics and stuff like that. I think polytonality, everything that he was doing was so special and ahead of its time, big time. Yeah, those guys, I guess. I don't know, there's a lot.
Was there like a moment where you remember being like, I'm going to be a musician? Or was it kind of just like, this is naturally happening?
I didn't really think I was going to be a musician until high school. Towards the end of high school, I started studying with this really incredible teacher named Hal Crook, who probably many people are familiar with. He has great books on improvising, and he's kind of taught everyone via Berkeley or the Monk Institute. And I know Colin probably was Hal through the Monk and stuff. And he happened to live in my hometown. So I got super lucky, and just, he was around. So I got to study with him. And he basically told me, like, look, if you want to do this, I think you can. He kind of was like, actually, you have good grades and stuff. You should do something else. Like, don't be a musician unless you have to. Like, be a doctor, or like, just, unless this is the thing you just have to do and you have no choice. But he would say that in the same breath as being like, I can get you a full ride to Berkeley if you want to go, but you shouldn't go. So, it's like total mixed message. But yeah, that's sort of, I guess it took someone of his caliber and like kind of like a mentor for me to just kind of sit me down and be like, you can, because I definitely wasn't like a confident, I'm still not a super confident person, musically. And so, yeah, having a elder figure help me along was a big deal.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, I teach a lot of like little kids, and I feel like just encouragement is so important. And
yeah,
you do some teaching as well, right?
Yeah, I do. I teach out of a school in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Conservatory. And I always have a couple of students at the new school. The private students who find me for something into, but yeah, I mean, I love teaching. It's I think it's really important, even though it's not really a big part of my career, I guess, time wise and financially and stuff. It's still something that I think like we all should do if we're capable of it, because anyone who's had a really good teacher knows how important that is. And I feel like if we're capable of being a good teacher, and we try hard at it, it's like in a really important way to keep this music alive and in the right hands, because there's a lot of I mean, I just think there's not a lot of great teaching out there, and YouTube and everything now, even in the bigger sense, it's hard to know what's true, and you're getting information from so many different places that having a genuine expert who's compassionate and aware is really precious. So I think we kind of all owe it to our younger selves, to be there. So yeah, love teaching.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, I guess kind of to shift a little bit, I want to talk about your 2020 release, Where We Started. It came out back in July, is that right?
Yeah.
And Colin's on that too. It's so good.
Oh, thank you.
Talk about that project and how it came about, and maybe we can get more into maybe the compositional process for some of that.
Sure. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, that was a record. Colin was there for there was a lot of craziness along with it. There was this bizarre freak snowstorm. I forgot, there was a crazy name, polar vortex thing that happened. It was crazy. And there was all this malfunctioning equipment, and we had to come back and do another day. And Ben Monder is on that, and he had thrown out his back the day before and wasn't sure if he was it was all this stuff, so it was definitely a kind of a crazy few days of session stuff, but it ended up working out great, and Colin sounds amazing on it, as does everybody. But that music came out of it's a pretty famous, probably at this point trite quote, T.S. Eliot quote about kind of looking inward and how sort of life is about understanding yourself, and how when you, quote basically says, you go out exploring and you look and you keep exploring, but when you finally come to shore, you realize it's where you left in the first place. You just come back to where you were, and just kind of the idea of finding the full picture of yourself, even since you were a kid, and just trying to, I think one of the things I say a lot is that it's really hard to express yourself, period. And so I don't understand how you can express yourself if you don't know yourself. And that first step of knowing yourself is a real challenge for me. Some people, it seems like they're just able to do that, but I always questioning what's real, and what do I feel, and what do I perceive. So there's a lot of that kind of thought process of kind of returning to the self a lot with that music. And then whatever's not my own compositions on that are just other tunes that I feel that kind of searching quality to them. And whoever wrote them. Yeah.
Talk about when you start writing a new tune, how it takes shape for you. Is it harmonic first, or what does the process look like?
Yeah, I know, right? It's a weird thing. I tend to write almost all my music out of free improvising. I tend to just sit at the piano and start playing and see what comes up. It's pretty rare that I have harmony first and then put a melody on top, or vice versa. It's usually kind of has to be at the same time. Every time I've tried to do one or the other, it always ends up coming out like garbage, I feel like. So it kind of needs to be this quick thing. But I'm also not much of an editor, so I kind of try to get the whole thing done in one sitting, and I tend to not keep it if I need to come back to it. So yeah, that's sort of my main thing is I'll be thinking about something, or um, whether it's a memory or a person or just something. A lot of times, something that I'm uncomfortable about. My teacher, Danilo Perez, great pianist and composer. One of my favorite things he ever told me was to play what you don't like about yourself. He had us play a lot of free music, and and I remember one time he asked me to play an intro to a song, and he said that was beautiful, but he said the world isn't that pretty, and it's not. And not that we always have to try to put the entire world into every intro to a jazz standard or anything like that, but these like little nuggets, these kind of things, they're almost prompts, really. They end up being like a meditation prompt or something. So I'll try to keep those in mind and just get going on the piano and see if anything rises to the surface.
Cool.
Yeah.
What was it like releasing an album during the pandemic? Did you have like a tour planned and stuff, and it just all went down the drain?
Yeah, pretty much. I had some stuff planned, obviously, as one does with this, and it sort of came to the point of, do I want to hold on to this for yet another year? It had already been a really long process. Like I said, there was like those all these problems with it and stuff, and it just kept getting delayed. And then the pandemic obviously changes everyone's timelines, and I just thought, I don't want to sit on this music so long that I don't want to play it anymore, and just get it out there while I still appreciate it, and it still feels relevant to where I'm at, because especially this pandemic, I think, has been a pretty big life-changing event for most everyone I know. So I kind of felt like I was going to emerge a different person in some respect anyway from this. So why not get it out while I still feel like that guy who wrote the music? Yeah, I just put it out there. No gigs, no anything.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about like maybe your general experience, obviously like losing gigs and all of that. Did you find like with the extra time you were able to like, I don't know, for me, I was able to get into the stuff I cared about more and like reflect on what I loved about music again. I was just curious if you had any like silver linings within that crazy period.
Yeah. I'm curious, like what were the things that you said you were able to get at the things you like? What are those things?
Well, I was like doing my master's in composition, and I was really writing for deadlines and stuff I didn't want to be writing for, and like just so busy and kind of resenting music in general. And the pandemic kind of let me pause, and I did a thing where I like wrote a tune a day and called them quarantunes for like maybe half a month.
Yeah.
Like it didn't last long, but it was like this kind of falling in love with it because I wasn't making music for anyone but myself. So that's kind of where I'm.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of people say similar things like that. And in many ways, I'm pretty jealous because I actually went through grad school. I decided to just, since I had a lot of time, I was like, okay, I'm going to actually finally go to grad school. And I did like almost 3 semesters in one because I didn't have to commute and I could do everything from home, which I had some amazing teachers, which was great. And I learned a ton, but it was kind of a nightmare because it was just so much work and like constant deadlines and just way too much. But I did come out of it. Like I during the pandemic, I kind of just fell into this fluky gig of ghostwriting, ghost composing for a company. And it's all kind of obviously pretty hush hush in terms of what it is, but it involved a lot of digital components I didn't really know much about at all. Like almost everything I do is just at the piano. I don't even have a good home recording studio, nothing. I had a 2011 MacBook that didn't really run Pro Tools. That was like my whole vibe. But I, just kind of fell into this thing. And luckily I had been in grad school taking these classes on film scoring and digital composition and this kind of stuff. And it just, I happened to be able to say yes, I actually do know how to do the things you're asking me to. If it had been even a few months earlier, I wouldn't have been able to say that. And that's been really great. I've found a song that I wrote recently. Obviously, I can't say what it is or anything, but it had more than 15 million plays on Spotify, which was really kind of crazy to see, certainly more than anything I'll ever have my name attached to combined. So, but yeah, so in that way, it's been a really cool thing. I feel very lucky. I know a lot of people struggling hard through the pandemic, but I feel super fortunate to got that opportunity to do some of that work. But between that and grad school, and then also I kept teaching online via Zoom and stuff like that, I actually kind of found myself the busiest I've ever been in my life. I definitely was burnt out, let alone everything that's going on with the pandemic, the emotional impact of that, and being in New York, New York got hit super hard, obviously, and as Colin knows. And so all of that combined definitely left me pretty beat up. For the last few months, I've been definitely pretty worn down. So I hear a lot of people, including my fiance and other people who are very were touring a lot and had everything canceled and just didn't have much going on. So they were just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm checking this out. I'm doing the harmonic experience. Finally, I'm going through that book. Or yeah, I've been meditating. I've been, going for runs, or, I've been composing. I wrote a whole new book of tunes, all this stuff. And meanwhile, I'm just trying to get stuff done for deadlines, so, but it's a good place to be, I think, having some work for sure. It's a good thing, but.
Wow. Well, it's cool to hear about your experience. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, sure.
Do you have anything you've been working on, like any projects that are up and coming now that you maybe can tell us about, or any dream projects you've always wanted to do?
Yeah, those are, well, in a way, those things are kind of combined. One of the other things while all that stuff I was telling you was going on was I got asked to do, there's a great guitarist named Dave Stryker, who maybe you guys have heard of. And he reached out to me to arrange his music for a jazz quartet rhythm section, and then also a string quartet, and to do 8 tunes and a overture, which was a ton of work. And I have some experience doing string writing, but not a lot. And especially doing jazz, kind of swinging straight ahead, anything within that realm with a string quartet is really challenging. With a string ensemble, I feel like you have a lot more room, but a quartet is so intimate and so tricky that it was definitely, I learned a lot doing that. But it's the rhythm section for the project is Brian Blade and John Patitucci, who are 2 of my biggest heroes. And so getting to work with Blade and John and record with them and cater the music and write music for a specific band of that caliber. And obviously Dave is a great improviser and composer and everything else. So that definitely felt kind of like a dream band, in a lot of ways, getting to write for strings and play with those guys for sure. It's definitely a dream come true, yeah. And I've played some gigs with John over the years up at his church and through other things, through Danilo or Berkeley. I first met those guys in Panama. through Danilo, but it's obviously it's a very different experience when you get to do your music with them in a recording studio and stuff. Yeah, very special feeling for sure.
When is that coming out?
I'm not sure. We really just finished up tracking it just like a week ago. So yeah, it was very recent.
Wow. Well, looking forward to it. That sounds awesome.
Me too. Yeah, I'm excited to see how it all comes together. But it was definitely a really fun experience.
Cool. One thing I was going to ask you, so you play, obviously you're a band leader in many settings and also a sideman in many settings. And I was wondering if you could talk about what makes a good band leader and maybe what makes not a good band leader, and then also what makes a good sideman.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I can kind of say pretty much without exception that most of my favorite musicians that I've been able to meet and work with have been some of the best people I know. And I think in general, that probably goes pretty hand in hand. There's like a compassion and patience that is necessary for this music, because it's just naturally, it's gonna have mistakes when it's at its best. I think, there's so much risk involved that you need to have a kind of a short memory and to respect that and just know that when you're trying to spontaneously create, things might go awry. And I think that kind of builds a certain kind of band leader to just, yeah, to be okay with those kind of things. Almost everyone I've worked with, even, I've worked with a lot of singers, and I think singers often can get a reputation of being maybe taking less risks or being more in control of arrangements or their band or things like that, which I think is really unwarranted, because it's just not the case in my experience anyway. And almost all of the great singers that I've worked with have been super open and in the music and in the moment, and take care of the musicians in the best way and inspire and yeah. But I think I guess a bad band leader is maybe too precious about the music, and maybe impatient and maybe cheap. I don't know. Probably that's got to be on there too. Maybe not recognizing just how much of a challenge it is, I guess, to just do this music in the first place. So I'm always appreciative of anybody who's doing this, because it's so hard. It's like when people talk about hitting in baseball, it's like the best of the best fail 7 out of 10 times, basically. So I kind of feels that way a little bit to me with really improvising. It's just so hard, and there's going to just being all in it together, and yeah, feeling like there's no real hierarchy. You're all doing your best.
Mm-hmm.
Just that's the thing, right? That's what Hal used to talk to us at Berkeley was listen to the band and figure out what you need to do to make the music be great,
Mm-hmm.
not good. Figure out your role, and many times that might just be not playing at all. Maybe that's the best thing you can do to make the music great, but I just think that idea of we're all in this and we're all just trying to make that decision together, that makes a good band leader.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And you mentioned playing with vocalists. I know you played with Gretchen Parlato among many others. Mm-hmm. Could you talk about what you're thinking when you're accompanying a vocalist, and maybe like how you approach that situation?
Sure. Yeah, I love playing with vocals. the Gretchen, the Gretchen thing, I was very, very, very young. She got me sort of right out of college. I was not prepared for that gig at all. Bless her heart, she was really supportive and patient with me. But I went from listening to those guys, as a fan, to playing with them in way too short of a time. Very nervous, very not ready to be on that stage. But she really, it blew my mind just how nice, talking about like what I'm saying, the greats, whether regardless of generation, they were really really supportive around my my failures. Yeah, I in terms of playing with singers, I tend to treat most singers like I would any horn player who tells a story or anything else. I've been fortunate to play with a lot of really great singers too, who are totally receptive to that kind of accompaniment and just able to weave in and out of whatever's going on. So I may not even be, I have a lot of experience, but I might not be the best person to ask because I've just been so lucky, whether it's someone like Theo Bleckman, who is an incredible improviser just in general, tonal, atonal sounds, harmonic, show tunes. I mean, you name it. He's able to improvise so freely over everything. There's nothing, literally nothing I could play that would knock him out of any zone. He's open, very receptive, and Colin knows that, playing with Theo. And the same with Gretchen, or I play a lot with Sarah Gazarek, who's an incredibly gifted technician on the instrument, and that doesn't stop her from being super open, and she wants the band to take risks behind her and stuff, even if it's unsettled. But so maybe I've just been really fortunate to be able to comp exactly how I hear it, and that I haven't been really asked to not do that. But yeah, I think it just comes down from the training, really, like I'm saying before. It's just sort of taking a macro view and just trying to think about what does the music need right now, and what do I need to do to make it just be the best it can be. Keeping it simple like that. And same approach to whether it's a trumpet player or straight ahead or whatever. There's a role there, as a accompanist. But yeah.
Cool. Is there any musical setting where you feel the most comfortable, or that you just love the most? Like trio, solo, any kind of combination of instruments?
Yeah. I think maybe quartet, I think, is really where I feel like I can relax the most, because I get to accompany a melody often, and I can be a member of the rhythm section. I just love comping. It's just one of my favorite things to do. So I feel like when I play trio, I don't get to do as much of it as I want, in a way. I always have to comp for myself, which is limiting in a lot of ways. I'd love to find a way to get to a place where that feels as open as the comping I do in a quartet, I guess. But yeah, I love playing with people. Yep. So solo is very scary to me. Solo piano is yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You're freaked out.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. Those who are great solo players really just blow me away. It's so hard. But yeah, I think playing with lots of people is better for me, more fun, I guess.
I would pick quartet too. That's probably what I would do.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to ask you about, I saw in my little question sheet that I really wanted to get to, is the transcribing you did for the Herbie masterclass.
Oh yeah.
I'd love to hear about how that came about, and maybe what you learned spending so much time really getting in there with Herbie.
Yeah, that's another one of those bucket list kind of things. I've been really fortunate to have work like that. yeah, speaking of, like, Herbie is probably my biggest piano hero or music hero, really. And his comping on River, the Joni Mitchell record that he did, maybe the most influential comping I can think of in terms of just the approach. He's able to take any kind of tune on that, whether it's like a more jazz one, more folk influence, whatever, and he just sounds like himself, and it's just so appropriate. And it can be super dense harmonically and out, it doesn't matter, it just always feels like the right choice, so just wanted to like tie that into what we were saying. Like any pianist who's wondering about comping behind vocalists, or just comping in general in a modern context especially, that's a very special one. But so my fiance Carmen Stock is an incredible pianist. Maybe aware of her playing, and she went to the Monk Institute, now the Herbie Institute. Speaking of, and so I got to interact with Herbie through her. Really, that I was fortunate to be. I would go visit in California, and we would get to hang out and get to ask questions and stuff. And then when it came time for this masterclass to be made, he thought of us as people to work on it. And Carmen was super busy at the time, as she always is. And so I kind of ended up doing a lot of that project through that. And yeah, I mean, just getting to ask Herbie about those 60s recordings and stuff. And I'm sure you guys have sat there and tried to figure out what the heck is going on, like harmonically, or listening to Ron's bass lines or what Herbie's playing. It's like changing every chorus. And, Herbie was telling us that there were a lot of times where Wayne's charts wouldn't even necessarily would just have like a harmonic structure and a melody, but no bass line and no chord symbols a lot of the time. And Herbie said he would fake having to go to the bathroom to like go in there and scribble some chord changes to just like try to get something that he could play off of, steady. And I think maybe now, I hope I'm remembering this exactly right. It's been a while, but I seem to remember him saying that, and that Ron maybe didn't come to the same conclusions harmonically based off of the information given. And so that's why there's like a lot of back and forth, and why they're still feeling things out the whole time, but that's what gives it the sound, this like exploratory, very open, free sound, is that nobody really knew exactly what the picture was, and I think that approach he carried with him forever, from that Miles approach of just sort of thinking like, oh, maybe not all the information needs to be given. You can kind of change it at your will as what's appropriate, So, so yeah, that was, getting stories like that and interactions obviously is pretty special. Yeah, we did about, I think, like 150 pages of transcriptions for that, maybe more. It was a lot. And the solo piano stuff he does, for anyone who hasn't checked out that masterclass, who may be watching this or is into jazz in any capacity, it seems insane to me that you wouldn't. I think it's less than $100, which would be sort of a private lesson price for most anything, but you get 24 lessons with Herbie. And I can attest that the transcriptions are pretty good, and the music is incredible, and it's all stuff he did for this thing. So he'll play a 8-9 minute free version of Maiden Voyage, which is totally unique, and then talk about the process and talk about his harmony. And I can tell you, notating that stuff was a nightmare, But I learned so much that I can't think of any single thing I've done that has made me a better pianist and musician than those very grueling, like 3 or 4 months on that project. Yeah, very, very special.
Do you have like a favorite solo or two that's like your go-to Herbie solo? Maybe that's an
That's
impossible.
great. Yeah, it depends on how I'm feeling, right? And
Right. Of course.
I really I love the way he plays along with Ravel on the Gershwin record when he plays the concerto, and the way he's able to kind of somehow play the piano part to the concerto and improvise at the same time is so absurd, and it's so beautiful. I love that a lot. He said he used to practice that a lot. He would get concertos and put on records and just play along and improvise along with them and stuff. And it's said he was doing that when he was a kid, which that feels like really special, that it maybe took that long for him to revisit that part of his learning and childhood. And I feel like I can feel that a little bit in that recording. So that one is special to me. But in terms of just like solo, Herbie soloing, like I love that drifting solo so much when he lays back on those chords. It's some rhythmic magic there. And the Sorcerer, that the trio version, that's a pretty mean one. 1964, there's a lot on that. It's like you said, it's kind of impossible, but those are actual proof, for keyboard and getting to hits in the most relaxed and bad way is pretty. That's a masterclass for sure.
Oh, yeah.
On that one too. Yeah, there's a cool thing on that. I'm not sure if it ever made the class. There was a lot of stuff that we did that didn't actually make the final master class, but one of the things was, actual proof was a ballad written for a movie, and it's this really sweet even eighths ballad, groove to like a classic kind of Herbie kind of speak like a childish kind of even ballad thing. Yeah, it's gorgeous. And they made that track because he heard the bass line and was like, man, I couldn't even feel where one was. He's like, we have to do something with that. Okay, I've got this ballad I did for a film score. Let's just put it on top and see what happens. And they just did it all in the studio, which I always thought was really, really cool. He didn't write that, even though it's like a tune that we all know so well. Flexibility, I guess, not being precious.
Wow, it's so cool to hear all of that. Thank you.
It's a special one.
I was going to ask you, one thing I always ask is, since CCJA is a youth jazz organization primarily, I always like to ask what advice you would give a young student who wants to do this, maybe is brand new to jazz, but like is very passionate about music. Any advice you would give a young musician?
Yeah, I would say this is really hard. Remember that it's really hard, and to try not to give up, because I think many more people have the capacity to improvise than they give themselves credit for. And it's and sometimes teachers can get really matter of fact about things that are really hard because we've been doing it for so long. So I would say to ask a lot of questions and to seek out older musicians. That's the number one thing. Find, we're losing a lot of masters that were there for the beginning of this music. We've gotten to that point now where many of the origin stories are now secondhand, and the music within that. So find elders, find them and listen to them play and try to play like them. And even if you don't agree with what they're saying, do it anyway. Just study what they're telling you to do, because you might find out 5-10 years later that, boy, were they right, and you just didn't know it at the time. So even if you disagree, just do it. I think that's, and then you you can throw it aside if you decide later on that you don't like it. But I think that, yeah, just listen. You know, keep an
Well,
open mind. That's what this music's about.
absolutely. Well, I was gonna just do some like fun, maybe quick questions. Like,
Sure.
what is your favorite place you have gotten to travel because of music, and why?
Ooh, boy. It's hard not to say Japan. I just love going to Japan. Colin knows that. Yeah.
When I asked that to Colin.
Yeah, we've had some fun times in Japan for sure. And yeah, there's just a love and respect for art and specifically our art form and food and everything else there that's really infectious and special. And yeah, it's I love it. But I played in the Canary Islands recently, somewhere I'd never been. That was a really cool place. It's technically Spanish, but it's off the coast of Africa, and it's got a really kind of unique heritage and community, and that was a really cool place. I played recently that I enjoyed. But yeah, there's a lot, but I guess those ones would be
Awesome.
recent in mind.
All right, next rapid fire question. What instrument would you play besides any instruments you already play, and why?
I wish I played drums. I think I would love to play drums. That answer has probably changed over I really used to want to be a guitarist. I just wanted to play guitar on piano so bad, and after a while realized that was impossible and silly. But I still tried. But now, yeah, I wish I could play drums. I'm gonna try to practice, maybe finally get some lessons from Colin, learn how to play a little bit.
Okay, I have like two more. Anyone dead or alive that you would like to study with, if you could?
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, alive would be Wayne Shore. He's probably my hero, a guru, everything. And the few interactions I've had with him have been really the most inspiring conversations I've had in terms of the bigger picture of music. So studying with Wayne would be number one. And then maybe dead is much, much, much harder. Foray was known as being such a great teacher too, even though he was probably pretty mean. So getting to study with him would be pretty special, I think. Or I would love to study with Duke Ellington or Billy Strayhorn. That would be pretty special too. I don't know. It's too big.
And then, is there anything you've been listening to, jazz or otherwise, that we should be checking out right now?
Yeah. In terms of recent releases, Kim Cass and Noah Preminger have a duo record called Thunda, which came out a couple months ago. That has some stuff, especially I mean, the whole record is amazing, but there's some stuff that Kim plays that I've never heard done on bass. Like, he just plays bass in a way that has never been done before, period. And I feel like being able to make a statement like that is pretty rare. So that's definitely one to check out. Dan Blake's new record is really cool. His compositions are so interesting and beautiful, and the band is great. That came out maybe a month ago, something like that. That one's really, really great. Jason Moran's last couple of releases on Bandcamp are really, really cool, inspiring. Yeah, I know I'm forgetting stuff, but those are some of the more recent ones that come to mind anyway, the last couple months.
Awesome. And then finally, what's next for you now that things are opening up? You'll come to Denver? We can hear you or something soon? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah, good question. I would love to know that too. You know, it's I was emailing today with some folks in Europe about gigs that I had before the pandemic that just keep getting pushed back and back. And Colin and I were supposed to go to Japan again, and that's been pushed back and back and back. So, but I have faith these things are going to happen. But I would definitely love to come to Denver. I've only played in Denver once, and that was with Theo Bleckman actually at Daz. That was really fun. I'd love to do that sometime. Come visit Colin. Maybe we can make something happen soon. But yeah, in terms of what's next, I been focusing so much on that record with the strings and stuff. Getting that out and finished and out into the world is going to be a big mixing it and getting all the parts together. That's next for me. And I'm getting married in August, so
congratulations.
Dealing with that. Thanks. So there's a lot that goes into it. Turns out planning a wedding actually takes up a lot of time and stuff. So we're going to be kind of doing that for the next few weeks, and then yeah, we'll see. I have some tours, tentative tours with Sarah Gazarek in the fall and into the hopefully those might happen, but again, those have all been repeatedly pushed back, so they may be pushed back again. But it's hard for me to give anything definitive, but I think, you know, probably mostly New York gigs at small live streams and stuff. I'm playing tomorrow in Boston, another live stream with Noah Preminger and playing his very cool and difficult music. He has a residency at a place called Virtuosity, and they have a really nice stream. It's a really good sounding stream. And yeah, I encourage you to check it out. I think they're archived as well, and he's had some really great bands there. So we can watch that tomorrow if you want.
Awesome, good to know. Well, we're really looking forward to hearing that release, hopefully soon with the string quartet, and hopefully seeing you in Denver at some point. Yeah, it's been so much fun talking to you. This hour like really flew by. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
Oh man, it's totally my pleasure. You guys are great. Thanks everyone. Be well.